I'm joined to my far right by Council Vice President Sharon Green Middleton, 6th District member of the committee, also joined by Councilwoman Felicia Porter, 10th District member of the committee. Joining us on behalf of Mayor Brandon Scott is Nina Themlis, Natasha Mehew, and Sophia Grebwihat. Close. Nina, close? Closer. We'll get there by the end of the week. Joining us on behalf of Council President Nick Mosby is Nate Poole and Matt Stegman, and of course, the person in charge, Marguerite Curran, staff to the committee to my immediate right. We're here first for Baltimore Development Corporation. We have Colin Tarbert, President and CEO. Colin, please introduce your team and then take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's good to be with you this morning. Appreciate the time. My name is Colin Tarbert, President and CEO of the Baltimore Development Corporation. We're the city's economic development agency. I'm joined by Kim Clark, our Executive Vice President, Jeff Pillis, our CFO, and Chevelle Dixon, our Controller. And if you'd like, I can begin the presentation at your pleasure.
Here, you want to use this?
Oh, go ahead, Colin. Take it away.
Sure. So we are here to present our FY2023 budget recommendations. We have 3 services at Baltimore Development Corporation, and I'll touch on all 3 today. Our first is retention, expansion, and attraction of businesses. This is really the focus of BDC to help small businesses, medium-sized, and large businesses come to the city, stay in the city, and expand here. So we have focusing on key growth sectors, expanding companies, investing in Baltimore, and of course fostering opportunities for minority and women business enterprise participation. The current recommendation is to maintain the current level of service for this service. This is service 809, as well as 810, which I'll touch on next, is the current level of service. In terms of our performance measures, they are there. We have 2 outcome. We have 1 outcome and 1 output. The outcome performance measure is the number of jobs created or retained in the city of Baltimore. Again, this is our key focus: is jobs created or retained. You can see our FY 18 through 21 actuals, and then you can see our targets there. And so we're been pretty much on track in terms of reaching our goals. Although we don't have the target 22 or the actual 22s there, we did calculate those, and we were at about 2,300 jobs, so just about 500 more than what was targeted. And then in terms of our output, these are the number of companies that we assist in staying in the Baltimore City. And there you can see our numbers. I do want to point out the actual for FY21, which is significantly lower than the target. The reason why is basically because of the pandemic. It doesn't, that number doesn't include all of the pandemic-related work that we've done. So when you include the number of businesses that we've assisted through COVID-19, that 29 number is actually over 1,600 businesses. So a huge spike there, but that's the difference there. For target 22, which is 174, the actual number for that I think is 141. So you can see we're kind of back to helping those businesses. We're still doing a lot of the COVID work as well, but those numbers are not reflected in this particular slide. So with that, I'll pause. Do I pause for questions or keep going?
No, you go through the whole presentation. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Sure. Our second service is real estate development. This is service number 810 under the pillar of equitable neighborhood development. This service promotes real estate development, including strategic planning, development assistance, expediting building permits and other approvals, negotiating the sale or lease of city-owned property, managing urban renewal areas and business parks. BDC serves as the single point of contact for anyone interested in taking on real estate projects in the city. The fiscal 23 recommended budget maintains the current level of service as recommended. This funds about 42 positions in BDC across the organization. We have we have the outcome and we have the output. Here the outcome is the dollar value of private investment per dollar of public investment, which I'll come back to. And then the second is the output. This is the total value of projects in the BDC development pipeline in millions. The thing I just wanted to point out here, because the numbers are a little bit kind of all over the map, that really has to do with the scale of the projects that we're working on. So BDC works on projects of all sizes and types across the city. And so there you'll see numbers that range into the billions and then into the millions, and that's really just kind of demonstrates the types of scale that we're working on. So projects like Harbor Point and Port Covington are very large projects, so the public dollar amount versus the private investment is a very large ratio. And then we work on smaller projects like the Washington Village Library project, which is smaller scale neighborhood, and so you're going to leverage less private investment for smaller scale projects. I think the rest is self-explanatory. And then I'll touch on our last service, which is called Technology Development, Emerging Technology Center. It's a little bit misleading in that this also includes the Made in Baltimore program, which I think people are very familiar with. So the fiscal 2023 recommendation is to maintain the budget at the current level of service. This supports 8 positions and funding for the Made in Baltimore program. So again, this is our Emerging Technology Centers, which is provides an array of services to help Baltimore entrepreneur launch sustainable, successful high-tech, biotech, and manufacturing businesses, and also comprehensive services to help startup companies complete and succeed in the marketplace. We operate about 20,000 square feet of co-working space. And then the Made in Baltimore program helps small makers. I think we have about 200 small-scale manufacturers in that program. The output for this this service in terms of performance is the number of jobs created by all current companies. So you can see that that's pretty steady in terms of ranging between 300 to 500 companies annually. And then the effectiveness is the percentage of graduates still in business, which is ranges from 70 to 100%. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Charbert. We've also been joined by Councilwoman Odette Ramos from the 14th District.
Thank you,
I'm going to
Mr.
start
Chair.
off with Council Vice President Middleton, then we'll go over to Councilwoman Porter.
I guess just one quick thing. Could you just kind of explain if the role you play in, I guess, the redevelopment of the racetrack, or the things that are going on at Pimlico? Does your organization have a role in that? Could you just kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure, thank you for the question. So BDC, we're very excited to be working on the Pimlico racetrack redevelopment. It's going to be hopefully transformational, not just for the Pimlico property, but obviously our focus is on the Park Heights neighborhood and the surrounding communities. So we, BDC, my predecessor Bill Cole, worked steadfast to get the Preakness saved and stayed in Baltimore, which is exciting. We continue to work on getting the budget for Pimlico released so that we can start the design work. Laurel Racetrack, which is also part of the overall state legislative package, has been a little bit of the difficulty in terms of getting the overall projects on budget on time. But Pimlico is on budget, and the state legislature made some approvals to move that project along. And so, as you may know, I've been meeting with the community monthly now to hear their thoughts on what we should be doing through the compact. And our goal is to start design on the master planning area around the racetrack later this year. So just to be specific, the racetrack redevelopment, which is the track and the event space, is being led by the Maryland Stadium Authority. And then once they complete their project and design and implementation of the infrastructure for what we call the out parcels, which is roughly 40 acres around the racetrack, BDC will then take possession of those parcels and develop what we would call the vertical development. And so what gets developed there is the question. We have some general ideas, but really we're going to wait for the community and the design process, which will hopefully commence later this year, to be able to put together the vision and really speak to what the community wants to see. And thank you to you for your additional funding, which we'll be receiving this fiscal year. We'll have additional funds to include outside of the site, the Park Heights Main Street area, or I guess technically it's the RBDL, but the commercial district there, to make sure that those small businesses are included in the overall planning and vision for the racetrack.
Thank you for that, and thank you for forming your partnership with Park Heights Renaissance to help with the Main Street areas.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chair.
One quick thing. I want to acknowledge Councilman Mark Conway, 4th District. Bob, I'll dive a bit more into the letter from Finance from, I think, yesterday or the day before in response to my letter, but I really appreciate the comprehensive response and the fact that, as best I can tell, you're the only agency that completely responded to the council's request. I want to quickly hit on 2 items. One was funding for master planning and pre-development work for Pimlico redevelopment plan and commercial corridor along Park Heights Avenue between Northern Parkway and Belvedere Ave, which I believe Mr. Tarbert just referenced, in the amount of $200,000. And I just want to confirm everyone's on the same page, that money's being transferred and everyone's good. Mr. Tarbert, you're good. I've also been joined by Councilman Isaac Gitzi Schleifer, 5th District, member of the committee. And then the other item deals with funding for initiatives in the 8th Council District, specifically $125,000 to Baltimore Development Corporation for Irvington facade improvement grants. And we're good there, Bob. And Mr. Tarbert, we're good. And if you could please pass that back to the councilman. I'm sure he's sleeping right now because he had a baby yesterday, but I'm sure he'll be pleased to hear that when he comes up for air. Excellent. So, Mr. Tarbert, you're good on both those items?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. We will go next to Councilwoman Porter and then Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tarbert, I had a quick question about the Port of Baltimore. So the foreign trade zones, I wanted to know what the progress is or if there's any type of programming with regard to kind of expanding the port, what that looks like from a regional perspective, if there's any conversations with other states in their ports. So how are we kind of programming the port, given that it's one of like the top 10 busiest ports? I want to make sure that we're capitalizing off of that asset in South Baltimore.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The Port of Baltimore is one of the main economic drivers in the city. I think it supports over 40,000 jobs directly or indirectly in the city. Baltimore Development Corporation, we operate what you refer to as the Foreign Trade Zone. So that program, which we operate in Baltimore City as well as some surrounding counties. So we actually operate this, I think, our only service that we operate outside of the footprint of City of Baltimore. That provides basically a tariff relief for businesses. So if you're importing raw materials that will then be used in manufacturing, when those are brought into the foreign trade zone, you do not have to pay the tariff that would normally be due until those projects or those products are manufactured and then ultimately exported. So we're very excited. We have a new foreign trade zone director who's excellent, who just started with us maybe a few months ago. Okay. And the foreign trade zone is number 74. And so we are looking at the opportunities to expand. He's getting up to speed on who's in our foreign trade zone. We do have the opportunity to expand it when we get requests. And so that's definitely on our radar as an opportunity. Hopefully we'll be able to market the program more as well. So I'll defer if I don't know if Ms. Clark has any additional comments that she'd like to make.
So our territory for our foreign trade zone, it's a little weird. We go all the way over to Queen Anne's County, but not the whole county. So we have to be within a 90-minute drive from the customs office in Baltimore City. The officer has to be able to meet that location, be able to get to that location within a 90-minute drive. So we go up to Cecil County and over to Queen Anne's County, including Howard and all the others along 95. So expanding out of state will be a little bit difficult. Many of those have other established already foreign trade zones, but ours does very well. It's very respected, and as Colin said, our new guy is really kicking butt. He's out there every day.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that, you know, Mr. Talbot, that kind of jives with a few of the questions I've asked before about expanding into businesses for South Baltimore. There are industrial and manufacturing businesses that could potentially utilize this program, small businesses that can grow to scale, that would be very beneficial to not only the city of Baltimore, BDC, but also the neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, we'd be happy to meet with the different business associations. I know Carroll Camden and or others are very active, and so I don't. Will may have already gotten to them, our foreign trade zone director, but if not, we're happy to set up those meetings and coordinate through your office just to make sure people are aware of the program and can benefit from it.
Okay, and then my next question has to do with the emerging technology centers. One of the main staples that I see with those emerging technology centers is technical assistance to businesses. It's really ensuring kind of like a tech accelerator program. Do you have a map of where those kind of businesses are that you all are helping with, like the various unique programs that you all have for entrepreneurs? Is it primarily in like the downtown area region, or are they in the surrounding areas as well, particularly those that are not in like that downtown area? Just trying to get a map of the businesses that you all help with those programs.
So the emerging technology centers, which from a physical standpoint is actually located in East Baltimore, so it's over on Haven Street, so it's not in downtown. So the companies that we help directly that are housed there are housed at the ETC.
Okay.
So they're not downtown. And then we also provide programming at the ETC, which anybody's kind of welcome to come to.
Okay.
Oftentimes it's held at the ETC. And then we also offer like what we call the Beehive, which is more of a membership base.
Yeah.
So I don't have a map per se, but we can get you kind of like
The businesses, the list of businesses.
yeah, who are part of the Beehive. I think it's pretty much like citywide, so anybody that's interested in those services definitely have access to those services.
Okay. And can you share the community engagement strategy of like working with those businesses from the Beehive? Like, what are some strategies that you all use for community engagement?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's like right now we've been doing virtual because we've started to do more. The one that we're doing is called Open Mic.
Okay.
So for the last 2 months, we've been hosting it actually Monument City Brewing, which is next to the ETC. And so any entrepreneur can come and do what we call an open pitch. So they can get up on stage, they can pitch their business, and then we have a number of entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, others there. And so that's open to anybody that wants to come participate. I think mainly the community engagement has been on the social media. So ETC is only 3 people, so it's not a large organization. So again, we'd be happy to kind of coordinate through your, if you have a distribution list or others, to get that information out. But again, these programs are citywide, so if any businesses in your district can participate.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll be helpful, kind of utilizing, the listservs of each of the council members. We have a wide range of not only community stakeholders, but also business stakeholders as well, that we can begin to push that information out to get it more, I'm not as, I'm not going to say I'm concerned that it's over in East Baltimore. I'd love to see it in all aspects of the city, to having some sort of hub, innovation hub, particularly in hard to reach communities. So that may be a way that you can kind of bridge that gap between getting the information out there and expanding it truly citywide to get hubs all over the city.
Yeah, and I think just because we just started in person again, there's sort of a ease to doing it next to ETC, but I think we could take like the open mic night event and move it around the city. There's no reason why it has to stay next to ETC, so I think that's a great idea.
We have a couple breweries in the district.
There
so
you go.
would be more than willing to help.
We've supported a few of those.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Councilwoman Porter. Before we move to Councilwoman Ramos, I just want to say that Baltimore is number 1 and 2 in import exports. I mean, we have like the best port that really we don't brag about enough. I also want to say that in the past, it's been a while, but the council periodically is able to, go on a tour with the port to go all around. And I guess since we have phased out of the pandemic, I'll work with the council president's office to get that tour done possibly before the summer is over. I mean, it's a very good educational piece, and then they also at some point bring some of the businesses there to talk about what they're doing, because there's a lot of mom and pop businesses that are looking for employees, and they have very good, well-paying jobs and so on. So thank you for that question and reminding me of that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
I had a question. Service 810, real estate development, I believe comes under you as well. Is that correct? Okay. Under effectiveness, there's 2019 number of new permanent jobs per 1 million public investment was substantial. And I'm wondering what happened, that, what was that blip that you had a lot of jobs per investment and then it's gone down, or are there these typos? What's the?
No, I had mentioned, I think you had come in
Yeah, I'm sorry
after I
if
had mentioned
you had
that.
mentioned
It's
it
fine.
earlier.
Yeah, the numbers are kind of all over the place for that top line in particular, although it also affects the bottom line. The reason why is because we just have some larger outlier projects. So I want to say that the actual for 2019 is a reflection of Harbor Point, or I believe.
Okay.
And we've started, I think we may have changed the way we calculate it, because it was calculating Harbor Point as sort of like one project in 1 year, which really it's multiple projects over many years. And so we've started to tweak that so that the jobs that are actually created are sort of phased in. So I think that's why that one is such an outlier. You'll also see the target for 22, which is another $1 billion number. That I think is reflective of Port Covington coming online. Mm-hmm. So it's really just a reflection of like those larger outlier projects that BDC works on. And then, most of the projects that we're working on are much smaller and more neighborhood based, mm-hmm. which leverage less money, but obviously are important to the neighborhoods.
Big impact, yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you, I appreciate that. Can you talk a little bit more, and again, if you mentioned it earlier, you don't have to repeat it, about the, you've gotten a pretty good chunk of money from ARPA, and if you can talk a little bit more about how that money's being distributed to our small businesses and others, that would be super.
Sure. So we received $11.7 million in ARPA specifically for what we call our base network, which is business assistance supporting equity. So this is targeted on very small businesses, almost micro businesses, as well as BIPOC-owned businesses. We've been able, with the success of the program, to leverage some additional funding to match the ARPA. So we've gotten
cool.
$1.7 million as a federal earmark that Senator Van Hollen supported, and then we were also able to attract, I think for the first time, a very large national philanthropic grant, $500,000 from the Rockefeller Foundation, which is helpful because the ARPA money comes with some strings and some restrictions, and so the Rockefeller money and even the federal money is a little bit more flexible, or the earmark money, I should say. So we just, so there's the way the network is set up is it's BDC along with 16 partners. Those partners are various nonprofits. For the most part, they're Black or BIPOC led organizations. They're CDFIs, they're technical assistance providers, they're community kind of grassroots organizations. It's a good mix. We started this during COVID prior to ARPA, and it worked well, and so we were fortunate enough to get the ARPA funds to keep it going, at least for the next 2 years. So, so it's both, the funding is going to the 16 service providers to help them staff the network. Basically, any small business in Baltimore City can contact the network for whatever assistance they need, growing their business, applying for grants, et cetera. We will then match them with the right technical assistance provider and then kind of collectively track that small business through the process. So the network meets weekly, and it's kind of become one organization now, which is really nice. We also share all of the customer database, which before we had never done. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'll talk about Baltimore together. But that's sort of the idea, is to really kind of maximize our resources by collaborating with others. So one is to fund the partners, and then most of the money is going directly to small businesses through grants. And the way we've done it is we're trying to match make. So when we went through the pandemic, or still going through the pandemic, what we learned was most of the small businesses, especially like a mom and pop or kind of a solo entrepreneur, they didn't have the resources to apply for a lot of the resources that were offered. PPP was one, just state grants, even our grants were kind of challenging to get through the process. And then we also saw a lot of businesses needed services, so legal services. They had rent issues with landlords. Two was accounting. A lot of them were just keeping the books themselves on like Excel. Three was marketing, trying to get like online and build a website. So what we did was we created a call for vendors of city-owned small businesses that provide those services, and then we basically vetted those businesses, and so they're on a directory now. And then we did a grant program to have small businesses apply for grant funds who needed those services, and then we awarded those grants, and then we're trying to match make so that those dollars that we're awarding to one small business gets spent with another small business, so hopefully we can use the dollars twice, so to speak. So we just finished our first grant program. I think we'll have at least 2, maybe 3 rounds, depending on the funding. So our first grant round was a total of $4.7 million, roughly. We supported 221 small businesses with that. It was about an average of $20,000 per grant. 88% of the recipients were BIPOC owned. Of that, 58% were Black owned. And 78% were women owned. So that's where we are for right now with ARPA. So those checks, I believe, have been sent out and mailed. And then we'll do our next grant round probably in the fall once we kind of see what the results are from this first round.
And are you targeting, it sounds like you're trying to sort of cast a wide net in terms of the small businesses, not just those with a brick and mortar, because one of the things that came out of the pandemic was a lot of side hustles that have now become businesses. So hopefully you're also, trying to find them as well. They may not be brick and mortar businesses, though.
They don't have to be brick and mortar. The only requirement under the ARPA funds is that they did have to have the business established prior to a certain date.
Okay.
But they could have been a home business that was affected by COVID, that was established prior to the pandemic and are looking to expand into brick and mortar or virtual or whatever. So yeah, but there's not a restriction on being brick and mortar.
Right, gotcha. Because I know that the PPP was prioritized for brick and mortar, so that's why I was wondering about that. Okay, cool. And then you said you have possibly 2 more grant rounds that you're going to be sending out, or cohorts that you're going to be recruiting, I guess?
Well, there'll be grant applications, so we basically have done it by need. So we have a grant application open for a period of time, and then we'll advertise that. So please, we'll work with you to continue to push that message out.
Yeah, if you could send the graphics out. I think I included it in my newsletter the first round. So
yeah, and we have a website as well, and we have social media accounts and all of that. So we'll push it out. I know we're doing at least one more in the fall. It just depends on the size. So the 4.7 million was a fairly large amount of our 11.7. So if we did it that size, then we would probably only have one more, I think, grant round, because
right, if you're just using ARPA, right, for those, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you said you had leveraged as well, so.
Yeah, but I don't think we've made a decision yet on
Gotcha.
exactly how much we'll push out for the next round. But it'll probably be in the fall, and we'll make sure that that's advertised in advance.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Welcome.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We've been joined by Councilwoman Danny McCray, 2nd District member of the committee, and Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District member of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Schleifer, Conway. Councilwoman McCray.
No, thank you.
Everyone else good?
Yeah, I asked my questions.
Council Vice President?
Yes.
Colin, Kim, team, want to thank you guys. As far as I'm concerned, you're the highest functioning agency in city government. Appreciate everything you guys are doing and continue to do. And if there's anything the council can do to be supportive of your efforts, please let us know. We are now in recess until 10 a.m. with finance. Thank you.